Let me read you a list. The Odyssey, Wuthering Heights, Dune Part 3, Harry Potter reboot, Avengers Doomsday, Spider-Man Brand New Day, Hunger Games prequel, the second one, Moana live action, Devil Wears Prada 2, 20 years later, Scrubs reboot, Buffy the Vampire Slayer reboot, Prison Break reboot, Baywatch reboot, Masters of the Universe reboot, He-Man, Legally Blonde prequel TV series, Malcolm in the Middle revival, House of the Dragon Season 3, A New Supergirl, Toy Story 5, Shrek 5. And I am not even a third of the way through 2026. One industry outlet counted at least 37 sequels, reboots, or prequels hitting cinemas this year alone, not including TV, not including streaming, just cinemas. 37. And the correct response to that, if you are a person who loves movies, is somewhere between a heavy sigh and a genuine existential crisis. And here is the part that gets me. It is not even that these films exist. Some of them will be excellent. The Odyssey with Christopher Nolan sounds genuinely interesting. Wuthering Heights with Emerald Fennell directing had serious potential. I will be watching Dune Part 3 in December with my whole chest. The question is not whether any individual sequel or adaptation is good. The question is what it means when the entire landscape is made of them. When originality is not the baseline, but the exception. When the default is, what have we already sold people before? So, is Hollywood out of ideas? Or is something more interesting going on? Because I have been sitting with this question for a while now, and the answer turns out to be more complicated, more depressing, and honestly more funny than you might expect. Let's get into it. I'm not here to be one of those people who tell you that films were better when we were walking uphill both ways to the cinema in the snow. Some of my favorite cinematic experiences of recent years have been sequels. The Dark Knight, Mad Max Fury Road, Creed, Dune Part 2. That is why you are here. In 2024, for the first time in at least 50 years, every single one of the 10 highest-grossing films in the world was a sequel. Every single one. Inside Out 2, Deadpool and Wolverine, Despicable Me 4, Dune Part 2, Godzilla x Kong, Kung Fu Panda 4, Beetlejuice, Venom: The Last Dance, Bad Boys: Ride or Die, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. The only non-sequel that came close was Wicked, which is a prequel to Wizard of Oz, which is itself a beloved IP from 1939. So, close, but no cigar. To put that in context, in 1993, the top 10 at the box office included Jurassic Park, Schindler's List, Mrs. Doubtfire, The Fugitive, and Sleepless in Seattle. Original films. Big, popular, beloved originals that people watched in enormous numbers. In 2000, only one sequel appeared in the top 10 alongside 8 original films, including Gladiator and Castaway. Something has changed, and it did not happen overnight. Bob Iger, the CEO of Disney, on an earnings call, explaining why Disney is leaning harder into sequels. Not because they are creatively richer, not because the stories demand it, because they are known, and they take less to market. The man is not wrong. He is just being honest about something the industry usually tries to dress up. We have to look at the numbers because the numbers are genuinely wild. In the last 3 years, 71% of films that earned at least $100 million domestically were part of an established franchise. Out of the entire top 50 domestic earners over that same period, exactly 3 were completely original stories with no franchise connection. Elemental, Migration, and Nope. 3. On streaming, it's the same picture. In 2024, on Prime Video, Max, and Disney+, at least 72% of their top 25 most-watched shows were based on pre-existing IP. The only major platform where original shows slightly outnumber IP-based shows in the top 25? Netflix. And even then, 7 of the 10 most-watched streaming originals across all platforms that year were IP-based. And it gets worse. The total number of original shows being made is also shrinking. The 4 biggest streaming platforms combined launched 395 original shows in 2022. By 2024, that number had fallen to 279. That is 116 fewer original shows in 2 years. When streaming had to cut costs after the golden years, it was the originals that went first. Why? Because sequels are a safer bet. Financially, structurally, actuarially. Author Walt Hickey calculated that 66% of sequels make back their production budgets domestically, and 92% do globally. The odds of a sequel earning back its money are 3 times higher than for a new property. When you are running a publicly traded entertainment company, those numbers are hard to argue with. The math says, make the sequel. And then there's the dumbing down conversation. Because it's not just what gets made, it's how the things that do get made are actually written.
I don't know if you're aware of this, but there's something called second screen viewing, right? So it's a directive that's being handed out by big studios to filmmakers.
Please, this sounds like what I'm really hoping it isn't.
It is exactly what you probably think it is.
This is something that stands up to...
Which means that you have to acknowledge that people are on their phones the whole time they're watching telly. So you have to simplify the plot so that they'll be able to follow along while they're browsing on their phone. So that's why you'll notice now in random, like in TV shows, even with good actors, they're saying really obvious things about what's happening. They're laying out the entire plot line and all of their emotions and motivations. Like the language has become really bait and on the nose. And that's because they're being told, the writers, that they have to write in a way that someone can carry on with doom scrolling or shopping online while following it in the background. So nothing can be too complex, nothing can be too high end. It has to be like we are purposefully dumbing down content, and that is leading to a less nuanced, less interesting, less thoughtful society.
Jameela Jamil on The Ramesh Show described what she called second screen viewing. Matt Damon said basically the same thing on the Joe Rogan podcast. And Ben Affleck pushed back by pointing to Netflix's Adolescence as proof that not all content needs to be simplified. Damon's response? He conceded it was the exception. The exception. One of the most critically praised shows of 2025. An exception. Now, before we build our pitchforks and march on Hollywood, there is a question we need to sit with. Because here is where it gets uncomfortable. Are we the problem? Who went to see Inside Out 2? That film made $1.69 billion. $1.5 billion. The Wild Robot, one of the most genuinely original and beautiful animated films in years, made $307 million. Which is good. That is a good number. But it is not $1.5 billion. Challengers, Anora, Nope, The Substance, critically beloved, commercially modest. Conclave made $100 million on an indie budget, and people treated it like a miracle. Meanwhile, Despicable Me 4, which by most accounts is not a great film, made almost $1 billion. We say we want original stories. We tweet about it. We post about how exhausted we are by the endless franchise machine. And then we vote with our wallets for the familiar ones. And the industry is watching. They see everything. They see that nostalgia works. They see that you will queue for Beetlejuice 35 years later. They see that a spin-off of a beloved sitcom will get watched even when it is not very good. Which brings me to the most perfect case study I could have possibly picked for this video: How I Met Your Father. Based on the beloved 2005 CBS sitcom How I Met Your Mother, which ran 9 seasons and is currently being watched by millions on Netflix in 2026, Disney's Hulu ordered a spin-off, which premiered in January 2022, starring Hilary Duff, ran for 2 seasons and 30 episodes, received a 34% critic score on Rotten Tomatoes, and was canceled in September 2023 without ever revealing who the father was. Which is a choice. Here is the truly incredible part. There had been multiple previous attempts to get a How I Met Your Father made before this version finally succeeded in getting produced. Several failed attempts at making the concept work. Then one version that got made, then that version failed. There were then discussions about reviving the canceled spin-off. A Disney executive was asked about this and gave what was diplomatically described as a disappointing update that essentially said, no. So we have a spin-off concept that failed to get made multiple times, finally got made, failed, and then failed to get revived. A monument to the idea that emotional IP alone cannot save bad execution. And yet, the How I Met Your Mother universe keeps expanding in conversation because the original IP has so much emotional capital attached to it that the industry cannot stop circling it. That is the machine at work. That is the logic that produced 37 sequels and reboots in 2026. But here's the thing. This is where the conversation usually ends, with everyone agreeing that Hollywood is broken and audiences are sheep, and then everyone goes home to watch the new season of whatever existing show they love. I want to go one step further, because I think there is a more interesting answer hiding in the data. Originals do break through. The argument that originals cannot make money is not actually supported by the evidence. What is true is that they are not being given the same opportunity to make money. Get Out was made for $4.5 million and grossed $255 million worldwide. John Wick was made for $20 million and launched a franchise that has now earned nearly $1 billion. Everything Everywhere All at Once cost $14 million to make, grossed $70 million globally, and won 7 Academy Awards, including Best Picture. Parasite won Best Picture. Knives Out became its own franchise. The Substance made $73 million on a $17 million budget. Squid Game arrived from South Korea with no pre-existing English-language fan base and became Netflix's most watched show ever. These were not accidents. They were not lightning in bottles. They were original, specific, genuinely authored visions of the world that connected with audiences who had not been waiting for them, but immediately recognized something true in them. And then those audiences told other people, and those people told other people. Original works, when they are actually made and actually marketed and actually given the chance to be discovered, connect with audiences in ways that sequels structurally cannot. Because a sequel can only satisfy an existing appetite. An original can create a new one. So the question is not really whether audiences want originals. The question is whether the industry is willing to make the original first, before they know it will work. And right now, the answer to that question is increasingly not if they can avoid it. There's a structural reason for this that is worth understanding. The 2023 writers and actors strikes made studios even more risk-averse. The number of English-language TV series airing each year has dropped every year since 2022. The domestic box office is running $2 to $3 billion behind pre-pandemic levels. Streaming services are no longer spending at the rate they were in the peak TV era. The industry is contracting, and when industries contract, they retreat to the safest bets: sequels, franchises, known quantities. Which brings me to one corner of the industry where original stories still get taken seriously, and where they arguably get the most recognition: the Academy Awards. The Oscars, for all their significant flaws, actually tell an interesting story here. No sequel has ever won Best Picture. The one exception most people cite is Return of the King in 2004. And even that is complicated, because it was the conclusion of a trilogy the Academy had essentially been building toward for 3 years. And it also won the previous year. So they were really rewarding the whole body of work at once. Outside of that exception, the Best Picture conversation has almost exclusively been about originals or first-time adaptations, which means the industry's most prestigious institution has consistently affirmed that original work is where artistic distinction lives. And the industry's financial apparatus simultaneously operates as though that information does not apply to them. There is a reason for the disconnect. The Oscars reward what critics and the industry itself respond to emotionally. The box office rewards what mass audiences choose under conditions of enormous marketing pressure. If you spend $200 million marketing a superhero film and $10 million marketing an original thriller, you should not be surprised when the superhero film outperforms. The test is not fair, and the studios know it. So again, is Hollywood out of ideas? No. I don't think that's the right question. Hollywood has never had a shortage of ideas. It has a shortage of courage. The writers are there. The directors are there. The stories are being pitched in rooms every day. What is absent is the institutional willingness to bet on something that has not already proven it can make money, in a climate where the financial stakes are higher than they have ever been, and the margin for error is almost gone. And here is the uncomfortable part. We are the margin. Every time an original film opens and we wait to see if it does well before we go, we are making the next original film slightly less likely to get made. Every time we scroll past something unfamiliar on streaming and click on the 4th season of a show we already finished, we are voting. The studios are watching those votes in real time. I am not saying do not watch sequels. I am not even saying the system is purely bad, because some of the most ambitious filmmaking of the last decade has happened inside franchise films. I am saying, every time you hear about something genuinely original,
my initial reaction when I read the script, Everything Everywhere All at Once, was I have to meet these Daniels to see if they are insane or they're actually geniuses. The script for Everything Everywhere All at Once was totally, undeniably original. And it was nothing I had ever seen before. It could prove to be very, very challenging if the filmmakers didn't have a vision and didn't know what they were trying to do.
Something with a filmmaker's actual fingerprints on it. Something that could not have been made by a committee. Go see it. In the cinema if you can. In its first weekend if possible. Tell someone about it. Watch the drama. Watch You, Me, and Tuscany. Support the original stories. Bob Iger said sequels take less to market because they are known. And he is right. But what he is describing is not a creative strategy. It is a risk management strategy. And risk management, applied aggressively enough, produces a cinematic landscape where every film is a recognizable shape before you even see the trailer. Jameela Jamil said we are purposefully dumbing down content. She is right too. When you are designing stories for people who are half watching them, you are not making art. You are making wallpaper. But here is what I keep coming back to. Every single original story that has broken through in the last decade, from Get Out to Parasite to Everything Everywhere All at Once to Adolescence, has created a cultural moment that no sequel can manufacture. Those films did not just make money, they changed conversations. At dinner tables, in group chats, and in the comments of videos exactly like this one. They made people feel something new. And that is the thing about original stories. They introduce you to something you did not know you needed. They give you something to share that feels like a discovery. The question is whether the industry is willing to keep making them, and whether we, as an audience, are willing to show up when they do. Because the executives are watching the numbers, and the numbers are watching us. Somewhere in a writer's room right now, someone has an idea for a film that does not exist yet, that nobody is expecting, that could be the one you walk out of and sit with quietly for a minute because something shifted. That film deserves a chance.